Hey, what's up everyone? Cardboard.Capitan here, and today I want to share this Golgari Coil deck that I've been working on. Um, Now, first week of Foundations, well, not Foundations, but the December season, it first started with a whole bunch of otters because I'll say the number one player in Alchemy released their deck list of red blue otters, and I remember fighting like five otter decks in a row. Well, some people decided to start playing Golgari Ramp, and I don't know if it's just like what they wanted to play or it's reactionary because there are a few cards in here that are very good at wiping the board. So I'm calling it Golgari Coil because it's got this card Coiling Rebirth, and in short, it allows you to copy a card that revives from it, and you get two enter the battlefield effects. So originally there was a Rakdos Coil deck using the Carnosaur. I don't know if it's Triumphant Carnosaur or what, but the Carnosaur that discovers when it enters the battlefield, and loot monger to get cards into the field, and also the Perforator Crocodile. And my problem with that is that since it's red black, there's that one instant that destroys enchantments, but that costs life. So that's one problem. And the other problem with red and black is that if for whatever reason you can't revive your creatures, then playing them is a bit slow. So I went with Golgari because you do have the ramp as I'll say the main plan in here, and the rebirth plan is more of a backup plan. So you do have the option of Bear Triumph. Bear Triumph removes a creature and takes the place of Impetuous Lootmonger. And you have Rebirth with cards like Overlord, that's probably the least likely card you want to revive. Perforator Crocodile wipes some of the creatures on the opponent's side, and whoever survives, it has stab wounds, and you can kill people with multiple stab wounds. Rune-Scarred Demon, that's a new creature from Foundation, and it's a tutor on a flying demon, so, good stats. Flying, there's not too many flying creatures that I'm seeing into play. And it also lets you search for a backup plan. And finally, Vault-Born Tyrant, which can be a pain. Yes, there's Porcine Portent, which can exile it, but any sort of damage-based or kill-based removal will leave Vault-Born Tyrant, leave a token into play, and you can revive the original Vault-Born Tyrant with Rebirth or Virtue of Persistence. So those are the basic creatures in terms of revivification. I also want to talk about Fountain Port Charmer because it was buffed alongside the chorus cards and Nashi. And it's been made much cheaper, so this can come down turn 2, turn 3, and that's perfect because, in some games you want to play this on turn 2, Overlord on turn 3, you might drop this on turn 3, reduce creature cards in your hand by 2, and it's got good stats too, so, if you drop this early, while your opponent is building up their game plan, you can swing in and get a few points of damage. Wary Zone Guard, it has synergy with Fabled Passage, and if you can either discard a card from Bear Triumph, or take a land off the top with Underground Mortuary. Now, key thing to note is that it doesn't need to bring a land back into play to get +1/+1. So, if you need a high damage creature that grows and something that your opponent must answer, then it can be worth to drop on turn 3, even though you won't be pulling lands for it. Let's see, up the beanstalk, synergy with your big creatures, Overlord, even if you cast it with Impending, Rebirth, Exsanguinate, Virtue. And let me talk about Exsanguinate real quick. It's just a finisher. Like, usually you'd grab it off a Rune-Scarred Demon, Exsanguinate, by then you'd have a whole ton of land, QQ, destroy your opponent, right? 25 land, that's what feels right to me. None too fancy to comment here. Sideboard. Deadweight, Malicious Eclipse, that's for your mice. I'm finding more and more that Malicious Eclipse by itself isn't as good versus mice because that one mouse, the enchantment mouse from Duskmourn, Valiant Mousekin, something like that. Valiant Emberkin. That can put a mouse out of the range of Malicious Eclipse very quickly. So it's more for before that comes down, say the opponent drops an offspring with I forget the mouse's name, but the offspring with that can give double strike or trample. A Grievous Wound, I'm trying it out versus Heist. I haven't fought as much as Heist as I wanted to, so, this can be swapped out. Harvester of Misery, more creature hate, Maelstrom Pulse. That's another thing I'm considering. Maybe swapping 3 Maelstrom Pulse for the 2 Reclamation Sages. Reclamation Sage is nice because it does get reduced by Found Poor Charmer, and you can revive it. But Maelstrom Pulse is just more versatile because it hits enchantments in addition to all forms of permanence. And finally, Outrageous Robbery. That's more of anti-control because if you can land it, that's a draw X from their deck. So, one thing I wanna add, just looking at this right now, cease and desist. Destroy all creatures or remove some cards from the graveyard. So, if anything, I'd swap out Grievous Wound for cease and desist, and that's just a great card versus enchantment-based decks like the Dollmaker decks, right? Okay, so let's go to gameplay. Okay, so time for some gameplay. I'm going first, and even though Exsanguinate, I consider it a finisher in this deck, and so I only have 1 copy in it. It's in my opening hand, but otherwise, of the Beanstalk is great, Overlord is great, Charmer is great. So I guess the game plan is Beanstalk turn 2, probably Offspring Charmer on turn 3. Now, Wary Zone Guard, that's not a good play here because I have no lands in my graveyard. If I get a Fabled Passage, turn 1, turn 2, it's a good choice, but also if I need that early power, it's also a good option. But since I see black, I see green, I don't want to invest too much in just one creature because black has respectable removal for Wary Zone Guard. So right now I saw the Overlord. I can see some sort of mirror match going on. I think the opponent has more of a focus on reanimation, whereas I have a focus more on ramp. So even though I could go Charmer there, I don't want to overcommit to the board. I don't know if the opponent's running Deadly Cover-Up or not, but I don't want to take the risk just yet. So the opponent doesn't have too much of a defense going on, so I figured Overlord would be good enough for the offense. See, I miss drawing a land. I'm considering removing the elves, so calling bolting the bird in a way. But yeah, there's my land drop. I figured, hey, maybe it's just spared to hold it, right? Let me swing in. Opponent doesn't remove the overlord, so I get another land. Oh, and I play Charmer here. So something important to note. If you Charmer another Charmer, then the offspring cost gets reduced by the first Charmer's effect. So as you can see, even though I played the Charmer with offspring there, its cost was reduced by 2. So I only had to pay 1 green mana for 2 creatures. Now the opponent seems a little desperate right now, casting Smuggler's Surprise for 2 to get some lands, get some creatures. And I do see a Crocodile in hand, so that's likely going to wipe a lot of my board. Okay, opponent taps out for the Crocodile. So that's going to leave an avenue for the Overlord to come through. And even though I was doubtful about having Sanguinate in my opening hand, I'm able to bring it out this turn for the victory. So let me swing in with my Overlord. QQ for the Exsanguinate. And then that's 4 direct damage. So that's game 1 to me. Let's see. As far as what I'm seeing, even though Exsanguinate won the game here, there is a chance that maybe the opponent has some life gain through Vault-Born Tyrant, since it did have a reanimator kind of theme. So that's why I went with Outrageous Robbery instead. Not a good hand, not a good hand. 1 land, no, never keep that. This is keepable. I mean, mostly green lands, plus I have the Beanstalk and the Overlord. So, see how it goes. Now, some people like to run elves in their Golgari list, and the thing is, it provides an explosive first couple of turns, but later on in the game, it's not as good. So for me, I prefer having a more consistent game throughout the different matches, whereas opponent prefers having the occasional explosive first turn. And I guess that's the way it's gotta be with Reanimator in particular, because yeah, turn 3 Zombify. Now, that Crocodile isn't the best creature to reanimate in this scenario. I mean, it could have just been like Vault-Born Tyrant or Valgavoth or another hard to answer creature. So that's a bit more, I guess, randomness, chaos in the deck. But, if you like the style, you like the style. At the very least here, assuming the opponent doesn't remove my Overlord, I can trade with the Crocodile. Now I kept the Charmer in instead of swinging, just in case the opponent removes it. With reanimator decks like this, you'll likely see Virtue of Persistence, and it can do a -3/-3, and I would take 6 damage there. But the opponent drops the Charmer, quite charming. So opponent likely has more creatures in their arsenal. So here I go. Fountain Port Charmer for 1 green. And then drop the Crocodile. And that's gonna, potentially do -4, not -4. Potentially do 4 damage in his upkeep, but he blocks. And I have mana open for Bear Triumph. So right now, I'd say I have the advantage. I can keep building up mana from the Hauntwoods. I have Up the Beanstalk, and I have a good board on deck. Opponent drops the Overlord. And I do see a cash grab. So opponent has ways of bringing creatures from the graveyard to their hand. Pay 3 life to get rid of the Overlord. Okay. I think about attacking here, but I figured, hey, let me swing in. If they want to block 1 Charmer, okay, they're taking 14 damage. Now, I didn't want to overcommit there. I mean, I've got Robbery I can play at the end of their turn if they want to wipe the board. If they have no response, I swing in for lethal. Opponent must wipe the board, or at least get rid of the Crocodile and the Hauntwoods, the Overlord, if they want to survive. So Deadly Cover-Up, okay. Works for me. And opponent chooses to remove all Crocodiles from my deck, from my hand, through the evidence collection. So goodbye, Crocodile. Later, Gator. But QQ, Outrageous Robbery for 6. Plus, I get to draw from Up the Beanstalk. So, unfortunately, it's a bunch of lands. I have a few options here, but I figure the best one is Virtue of Persistence. That's a must answer for the opponent. Then I can drop the Fountain Part Charmer, so my creatures get a reduced cost this round. Okay. Now, even though the opponent removed all my Crocodiles, I can start stealing theirs. So, Fountain Port Charmer, that's a Desperation blocker. Okay. So, another Persistence is good. I'm not going to remove that Charmer because there's a low chance that the opponent removes their own Charmer. but I do go with a Rune-Scarred demon. I could have cast another Virtue of Persistence, but in green-black there's Maelstrom Pulse, so rather I'm gonna use Rune-Scarred demon as a flyer, and I believe I search out for a Coiling Rebirth. No, Outrageous Robbery, just as a way of stealing more of their win conditions, more of their answers. So, I mean, Coiling Rebirth is good, but it's not the end-all solution in this deck. It's more of a, hey, it's an option you have, right? Whereas the opponent focuses on reanimation. So, okay. Let me wrap up here. Thanks for watching. You can find me on X under the username Cardboard.Capitan. My Mox field is Cardboard.Capitan. I'll be posting this current version of the deck list. Might not be the same exact version as the deck list in the video, but the same concept. I also have a Jund version, which I tried, but I didn't like the inconsistency of it. So I'll have that on there too. Yeah, and if you enjoyed the video, do like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time.